Astrocast.
Welcome back to the Astrocast. I'm your host, Rue. Today is Sunday, March 9th, 2025. And an auspicious occasion indeed it is. This being the 50th episode of the Astrocast, just a little over 1 year into this awesome project, and we are hitting episode 50. I don't know if that says more about me being an excellent solo producer and that I can put out 50 episodes in a little over a year, or if it says, why aren't you at 52? You did a year, you should have 52. I think it was actually late January, if I'm not mistaken, when we recorded our very first episode. All right, episode 1, the beginner's rig for astrophotography, actually started on January 9th, 2025. So yeah, we're not quite at the episode every week level. We have consistently been there over a long burst of time, but these last few months have been tricky. I've had so much going on in my life, and it means a lot to me to get an episode out every week. But sometimes life is just not conducive to this, unfortunately. And as much as I would absolutely love to be able to upload every Tuesday or Wednesday, right now it's not always possible. But nonetheless, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I'm your host, Rue. We're going to be talking about a few different things on the show today, and it's going to be a very astrophotography-centric episode. I figured we kind of have to, being that it's the 50th episode. We got to talk astro. I do want to say I had some really cool stuff in the works for the 50th episode. Really cool stuff. And unfortunately, literally none of it panned out in time to be able to use for the 50th episode. So I've got a really cool interview that I've been working on nailing down, and I've just about got it nailed down. I've actually got a couple new things that I'm adding to the show very soon, including music. I've been working on a opening track. If you're a longtime listener to the show, you might know that the opening music is actually not a self-produced song. This was like a royalty-free song that I found a long time ago on the internet, and I was like, man, I love that sound. And I've been using it ever since. And I while I love the song because it's got the first 50 episodes all over it, but it's not mine. It's not something that I made, and I just don't feel right using it forever. So at some point we will replace the opening jingle with a homemade brew. You might not know this, but I used to actually produce music. Many moons ago now. But when I was in my teens and early 20s, I was very, very big into making music. So I'm no stranger to a DAW or digital audio workstation, play a few instruments as well. And it's funny because I thought, let me just pop Logic Pro on my MacBook, and I've never used it before, but surely I'll be able to bang out a banger of an intro song within a few days. And turns out you can't do that. While I am figuring out the ins and out and having honestly a lot of fun doing it, I actually got my my MIDI controller out, which is basically just like a keyboard with a 10-piece drum pad type deal on it, if you know what digital drum pads look like. So you can kind of like do a little bit of beatboxing on it and all that kind of fun stuff. But Logic is a really, really cool program. I got to say, back in the day, I used something called Acid, which you may or may not have heard of if you were making music in the early 2000s and mid to late 2000s. Sony eventually bought Acid, but it was so prevalent in our music that we actually used to call ourselves the Acid Rappers. How cool is that? Because we produced our music exclusively on Acid products. But that was really just looping music. That's all it was. Basically, we picked loops and found ones that sounded good sounding samples and combined them. And we got, everything. You didn't, bang out your own drums or get a piano roll. And, actually you could do that, but we didn't. We just, used loops and what have you. So a little bit different, obviously, because I'm coming up with an original tune and I've already got it in my head. And I am going to pay homage to the original intro with the new song, just so you know. And you'll have to wait and see what that sounds like. But once I get it perfected, or as close to perfect as I can get it, then I will go ahead and upload it. The other thing, which I'm still working on getting fixed because I was so excited about it and I really wanted to share it with you guys for this 50th episode, but I'll tell you what happened and then you'll understand. So I had an idea to start a call-in number. So you guys can basically call a toll-free number and leave a question. And then I will play the question back on the, next episode or, soon as I can, and then try to answer your question. It's a pretty simple, thing that a lot of podcasts do that I listen to. They'll have a call-in line where you can leave a voicemail and play back. So I really want to do that. But the problem is the service that I found with which to do it completely sucks. Don't ever use this service provider called Voicemail Depot. It's an absolute garbage service. They charged me $15 and they took my money and I literally can't use it for anything and they won't respond to any inquiries. You can call, you can email, whatever. I think it's just basically a scam website, but I mean, they did assign a phone number to me, but I can't do anything with it. I can't say record a WAV file and drop it in there so they have a message, an incoming message. But anyway, point being, I am working on finding a better service that will actually work. I consider just using Google Voice because I've dabbled in Google Voice a lot and I know that you can set that up for something similar. And I might look into that. I really just wanted to have a service, an inexpensive one that would host an online mailbox for me that would be easy to use. So if any of you guys know a good service like that, please feel free to let me know. You can email me at ruastrocast@gmail.com and I will look into it immediately. So, new intro music coming, some new features for the show, including, leave a question. Obviously, we also have the Patreon chat, and I'm going to be adding a specific area in there where our members of the Patreon that are part of the Astrocast Society can leave their own questions in audio file format if they choose to do so, or just write them out, and they'll always get answered first on the show just because they do support the show. And thank you again to our Patreon members. You guys know who you are. You're awesome. Thanks for keeping the chat up over the last week. I know I was very quiet in there because I had so much going on. I had a lot going on at the office too. I have a day job, which you might not believe because you're like, God, the Astrocast is just so successful and popular. How on earth is this guy still working a day job? But believe it or not, I do have to do that. In other news, I've been testing out the new piers setup in the side yard over here, and I am absolutely loving that, even though I'm still technically having to lug everything in and out when I'm using it because it's not a permanent type setup yet. But really, it was just testing the height of the pier, make sure that I could, clear my fence, get down below the neighbors' lights because they always have their lights on 24/7 now, which drives me crazy, but whatever. And just, make sure that my telescope could absorb photons without getting too much of the neighborhood's light. And it looks like the area and the height that I have it in is actually perfect. So if all goes well, tomorrow we will have an actual poured concrete pier. I've managed to somehow rope my brother and my oldest friend in the world into coming over tomorrow and helping me mix concrete and pour the pier. So very, very much looking forward to that. So hopefully next week when we talk, oops, sorry, I banged the mic stand by accident. I'm using my hands to talk like I always do. But hopefully next week when we talk, I will be telling you that my setup is now on a permanent pier. I don't really feel confident leaving outside, even with the Telegizmos cover on with the current setup, just because honestly, it's cinder blocks stacked on top of each other, and those tend to be a little bit wobbly And I don't know. I have nightmares about wind blowing really hard and knocking the whole thing over, even though it's probably perfectly fine. I've got like bricks inside and weights and what have you weighing them down. And I actually use some really strong contact glue on two of the bricks to keep them together, which I'm sure will make it extra fun tomorrow when I'm taking them apart. But anyway, it seems to do very well. And really, like I say, I was just making sure the placement was correct before I poured the actual pier. So I think what we're going to do with mine is we're going to do the, I guess, 4 really long lag bolts directly into the concrete, and then have that connected to a metal plate. That seems to be what like everybody I see online does. And that's just because once you have a metal plate, you can kind of adapt anything to it as far as, other screws are concerned. So you can put other types of mounts on your pier. Obviously, I'm starting with just the GTI, but, if I get it set up right, I'll probably put my CEM 26 out there, because why not have, if I got like an 8-inch pier, why have the little GTI on it when I can put the bigger pier on it? And if you have, a plate, then you can kind of adapt it to different mounts. From what I've read anyway, that's what I've been seeing so far. So I know I definitely will want 4 big lag bolts coming up out of there in a very consistent manner, so I can, put some nuts on them, drop a metal plate on, and then adapt whatever I need to directly to the mount. About halfway through new moon now, and in just a few days, if you don't know, we are going to have the total lunar eclipse. So I talked about it a little bit on a couple of shows over the last few weeks, but so yeah, Thursday, March 13th is when this is going to kick off. Just before midnight is when the penumbral eclipse is going to begin. Partial eclipse begins at 1:09 a.m. And then total eclipse, of course, is at 2:26 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So it's going to be a late night. I couldn't get off the next day, unfortunately, but I am not about to miss a blood moon if I can help it. So Friday is going to be a little rough for old Drew, but I'm sure it's going to be rough for many of you. We will get through it. If you have the opportunity, as in it's not cloudy, do not miss the blood moon eclipse. It is extremely cool. I know it's not like a total solar eclipse, but if you haven't seen a total lunar eclipse, or if you haven't seen one lately, like me, because it's been 3 years since we've had one locally, this is an excellent, excellent opportunity. It's also a good opportunity to test your chops with your photography, because the moon, even though it's obviously a very bright target, so you don't really need to worry yourself too much with things like aperture size and what have you, because it's such a bright target. Even with a, very fast shutter, you'll still pick it up quite well. It can be a difficult target just because it moves so fast, and lucky imaging is probably one of the best ways to image the moon. When you record video, extract each individual file out of the videos, and then go ahead and combine them together into one stacked image. But it's a little tricky to do that with the blood moon, because while you're taking that video, the actual eclipse is occurring. So the shadow is moving over the moon. So it presents a lot of interesting challenges, and I always try to do something a little bit different with each photography session of an eclipse. And this year, I think I am going to probably skip. Well, I don't know. I was debating if I want to bring a tracked mount or just get out my liquid head tripod, my kind of beefy tripod that I can use for things like shooting the ISS, basically. But then again, if I were to do a tracked image through like my GTI, let's say, then I could do lucky imaging. So I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that. I'd be curious what you guys are going to do when you shoot it. If you do manage to get any photos, please tag me in them. If you want to do at the Astrocast on Instagram, or even just hashtag the Astrocast on your, preferred platform for sharing images, I will definitely check around and see what I can find and, comment on your images and what have you. So make sure you include me on your session because I am very curious to see you guys' photos. I also had another thing change in the last few days. I went back to iPhone from Android. So I've been on Android for, I guess, about a year now. I was a long time Android user. I beta tested the G1, which was the first Android phone that came out publicly. And I was always on, the latest and greatest Android ever since. And then a few years ago, during I guess when the iPhone 13 was new, so I'm guessing 3 years ago, based on the fact that they release a new one every year, me and my wife went and I decided to get an iPhone just because I'd never had one and I wanted to try it. I loved my MacBook and my iPad, and I was like, you know what? Let's see what all the fuss is about. So I gave it a try. They completely sucked me into their ecosystem. Like, it's just, it's hard to describe if you're a lifelong Android user and lover of Android. I love Android. I'm a big fan of the project and AOSP, open source, all that kind of good stuff. But man, everything on the iPhone just works. It just works so well. It got to the point where when I switched back to Android a year ago and got the S24 Ultra, I couldn't type right on my phone anymore. Like to this day on my S24 Ultra, like I just can't type right. Like I'm constantly making typos and it drives me nuts because people think I'm an idiot making typos on posts because I'm always typing so fast. But on the iPhone, I don't make those typos. So go figure. And yes, I've tried third-party keyboards before you ask, lots of them. But anyway, this isn't an endorsement for iPhone over Android, but just me personally, I am very, very happy to have one back because it just makes life easier for me. And at the end of the day, a phone is really just a portal to your apps. And once you realize that, whatever portal gets you there the best is the one for you. Outside of that, I also got to test out that new lens a good bit, the 100 to 500 L, which is kind of my dream wildlife lens. I haven't gotten to use it for any astronomy yet, but I will obviously update you guys as soon as I do. Anyway, so about astrophotography, I was trying to think of a good topic that we could get into and get kind of deep into this week. And I thought to myself, I always see people either, I'm not going to say doing things incorrectly, but maybe just like not realizing what else they can do with the ASIAIR, specifically the software in the GUI. For example, I think I've talked to a lot of people who say they just use the live mode or just use auto run. And the live mode and auto run are great, depending on what you're doing, what kind of, session you're having. If you've got like friends hanging out, if you're trying to catch a comet, auto run can be excellent, especially if it's not in the ASIAIR's database. Live stacking is something that I always like to do whenever I have like a friend over and we're kind of hanging out in the yard looking up at the stars. I'll have a tablet set up that's displaying the image and, electronically assisted astronomy is what you're doing at that point, technically speaking, because it is just grabbing the next image and then loading it up and then rinsing and repeating. But there is a lot more you can do than just that with the ASIAIR, and particularly like in the planning phase, issues that people have when it doesn't go where they want it to. That's one of the common things that I see asked all the time. Like, for example, if you just finished your polar alignment and then you say, okay, go to Arcturus, and it doesn't go anywhere near Arcturus. And you're like, why the heck isn't this going anywhere where I ask it to? That's one of the common issues that I see. And I just figured we could go through a lot of these scenarios and I can kind of take you through screen by screen on the ASIAIR and just explain, little things about how each menu works, advantages, disadvantages, etc. All right. So first things first, before we even start talking about which menu does what, why don't we talk about how people connect to the ASIAIR? Because there's two different ways. And I think a lot of people, from what I've seen anyway, just connect directly to the ASIAIR and then kind of forget about it. And then they complain about bad Wi-Fi signal. They probably get upset because when they're connected directly to the ASIAIR, if you're using your phone, then you aren't going to have data because your Wi-Fi connection is being, consumed by the ASIAIR, which does not have its own internet connection. And therefore you can't get messages or listen to music or an audiobook or, whatever it is that you may want to do. So station mode specifically on the ASIAIR is what this is made for. So basically, I don't really know any reason why you wouldn't want to use station mode. Even when you have station mode on, you still have the option to connect directly to the ASIAIR. So, if, for example, you're normally in station mode at your house, but you decided you wanted to go image in a field somewhere far away because it's 3 borders lower, you wouldn't have to worry about the fact that it was in station mode. You could still, bring it out to the field. And even though your home network is nowhere to be found, you can connect directly to the ASIAIR and you're good. So the way that you can do this is going to depend a little bit on your home network, but it should be pretty similar for everyone. So the ASIAIR connects via the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi network to station mode. And essentially, once you turn on your ASIAIR, tap on, under your Wi-Fi, the ASIAIR network and connect. Then you can tap on the button at the top. And let me talk about the different menus that we have when we open it up first, so I can just kind of explain to you when I'm telling you about a particular menu where to look. So once you open up the ASIAIR app, at the top of the screen and you're holding it where it's in landscape mode, you will see several different buttons that you can tap on. There's one that looks like a little Wi-Fi symbol. There's one that looks like a camera. There's one that represents the guiding camera. There's one that represents the mount, one for the filter wheel, one for the autofocuser, one for the rotator, one for storage, and then one for info. So when I say the buttons at the top, those are what I'm referring to. So in this case, let's tap on the very first button, which is that Wi-Fi symbol. And from here, you can actually scroll down a little bit and turn on station mode. So you'll see station mode there on the right-hand side. Tap on that, and then you can turn on station mode. And it might give you a warning saying it's going to switch it over to 2.4 gigahertz. That's perfectly fine. Go ahead and hit OK on that. Now, I can tell you here, I ran into some really weird issues with my home network and I'm like 99% sure this is a setting on my home network that I just need to figure out. And once I fix it, it'll be fine. But for whatever reason, whenever I was in station mode, my Android devices, so my Samsung S24 and my Galaxy tablet S8 Plus, I think it's called, or something along those lines. It's a few years old, but it's a really nice tablet. They just wouldn't connect to it in station mode. So they would see it. So like, in other words, if I used my iPad to turn on station mode and tapped on my home network and entered in the password, and then I picked up my tablet, my Samsung tablet, and connected to that same home network, and then opened up the ASIAIR app and hit the scan button, it eventually would pop up with the ASIAIR. But then when I tapped it to connect and hit, enter app, it just gives me a spinning circle forever and doesn't actually connect. That being said, for whatever reason, on Apple devices, it does not do that. So it does connect directly through on station mode. So if you have a similar issue, try different devices is what I'm getting at, because you can run into different kinds of trouble depending on what kind of device you have. But I think generally speaking, most people don't have too many issues with station mode. So turn that on, connect to your home Wi-Fi, and then that way you can just stay connected to your home Wi-Fi on your phone or your tablet. You still have an internet connection, which is important, but you can monitor everything that's happening on your rig at the same time, which is great. Another really cool thing you might not know about station mode is that if you have a home computer, so like a PC or a laptop, what have you, that is connected to the same network, home network, that your ASIAIR is connected to. And generally it should be, unless you have two different, Wi-Fi networks at home. All you need to do is open up File Explorer and then put in / ASIAIR / and press enter, and it will connect you. You may have to enter in the administrator and password that you set within the ASIAIR app when it pops up, but it will let you actually pull up the storage directly on the ASIAIR. And this opens up a whole wealth of automation opportunities for us as ASIAIR users that normally would only be available to someone using Nina. For example, we could use live stacking software directly on our laptop or PC. So if we wanted to, like, for example, use planning mode to plan different, targets throughout the night, but we also wanted to be able to enjoy a live stack as the session comes in, we can do that on the PC. So what I would do whenever I had this particular setup going is I would use an app that automatically scanned the ASIAIR folder and then would stack the image. I think every 5 seconds it's set to check. And there's actually software specifically designed for this. And I'll link it in the show notes. The app is called, Astro Live Stacker. So it's a work in progress and they've been working on it for a while now, but basically you can set any folder that you want and it will automatically scan that folder for new images as they come in and then do a live stack and stretch for you. So it's a very, very cool thing that you can do. But again, only if you put that ASIAIR in station mode. All right, how about polar alignment? So polar alignment is going to be one of the first things that you do every time you use the ASIAIR. So it's fairly simple in the ASIAIR, though I will say I personally prefer like sharp cap drift align because you can actually see the star and it gives you a circle to line it up in. I like being able to actually see the stars. I don't know why, but like if you could just show me Polaris on the screen and then maybe overlay a circle of where it's supposed to be, I feel like I could get there a lot quicker. But anyway, I digress. Nonetheless, there's a couple different ways that you can handle polar alignment in the ASIAIR, and a lot of people don't know, but you don't need to have a view of Polaris at all to do a polar alignment in the ASIAIR. So if, like, let's say, for example, you've got a situation like mine and you're setting up a pier, but the best place to put the pier is a spot that doesn't have a great view of Polaris. Well, if that is the case, what you can do is on the row of buttons at the top, the very last one, the info button, if you tap on that and then scroll down, you will see under experimental features that there is all sky polar align. And what that does is it will actually let you polar align even if you can't see Polaris. So very, very handy feature. If you turn it on, all you'll want to do is, obviously press the little button to turn it on inside the info tab there. And then you can go to the preview screen, and from there you have arrows. Okay. So you should have, and if you don't have the arrows when you go into the preview screen, you should see a little left arrow right beside the word preview in the upper right-hand corner. Tap on that and that'll bring out the arrows. And this is assuming that your mount is connected. If your mount's not connected, go click on the mount button and then, check the settings, make sure that it's turned on. But anyway, this is how you can manually control the slewing of your mount. And a lot of people, they just click go to within the planetarium area and never actually manually control their mounts. But there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't manually move your mount in the ASIAIR. And there is a couple of reasons why you would actually really want to be able to manually move it. And we'll get into those. But right now, what I want you to do, assuming that you're trying to do the all sky polar align, go to the preview area again. And right to the upper left of where you see those arrows, you'll see rate. And depending on what kind of mount you have, the rate is going to go anywhere from 1x to mine goes to 800x on the GTI. So I can go up to 800 speed, and you might be able to go faster or a little bit slower, but go ahead and turn that speed up. And don't be afraid to turn it up pretty high. Like I go straight to 800 when I'm moving mine. It doesn't move that fast on the GTI, so nothing to worry about. I'm not trying to literally track stars. I'm trying to physically move them out to an area where I can see stars. So if, for example, you're set up in an area where you can't see Polaris and you want to polar align, go ahead and go to the info screen. Make sure that you've turned on that all sky polar align under experimental features. Then go back to preview, turn your slew rate up to 800 or whatever is a high number, and then press the arrow keys to manually slew your mount. And basically up, down, left, right is not up, down, left, right, obviously, because it's equatorial, but just hold them down for 1 second, see which way it's moving, and then, move the arrows appropriately in the right direction. And what you're going to want to do essentially is slew either to the east or the west of where Polaris would normally be, until your mount is pointing in an area that has a lot of open sky and stars. In other words, an area where it can take a photo and, see stars. So what I personally do is I will slew to the west. To the east rather, to the east of Polaris. And I'll slew at about 10 degrees or so, maybe a little bit more, until I'm like somewhere in the Big Dipper area this time of the year, in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously. And then once I'm there, then I can go ahead and go back to the polar align screen and start the all sky polar align, which is simple as pressing the play button. But you don't need to take photos or anything from the preview screen. You can literally just line your eye up with the center of your mount. This is another trick that I personally use all the time. Like when I'm, for example, setting up my tripod or pier and I want to get as close to Polaris as possible, I will literally get down and line my eye up to where it's in line with the mount. And I will physically move the mount until Polaris is, directly over the middle of my mount as I see it. And, generally speaking, I can get it within 15 degrees of, the North Celestial Pole, just doing that. So you can use that same trick when you're slewing to a part of the sky that has trees. You don't have to hit preview and press the button and all that. Just slew and then squat down a little bit over your mount and look and make sure that you're pointing at stars. And then, you're in a good spot. So anyway, after you do that, and you're slewed to an area that is, clear of trees and what have you, just click the button to switch menus again, where it says preview, and then tap on PA and then press that play button. I won't get into what you do from there for polar alignment because it tells you right on the screen what to do. But that is a really nifty way to polar align if you can't see Polaris with your ASIAIR. So just a little heads up on that. Now, another thing I want to talk about on the preview screen is something that I don't think a lot of people know you can do, but it is extremely helpful. So I was talking earlier about people saying they will do a polar alignment and then they will press go to on a particular object. Let's say it's Vega in the summertime, and it doesn't go anywhere near that object. So why might that be happening? Well, that could be any number of reasons. More than likely, the device thinks it's somewhere where it's not, like it might have the wrong GPS coordinates, for example. It could be any number of things, but really, I don't really worry about that because it is super duper simple to fix if it's doing that. If you know what you're doing in regards to syncing to the mount is what it's called. And the reason this was something so easy for me to figure out is because when I originally started, I was doing everything manually. I didn't have an ASIAIR, so I had to do like a 3-star alignment on my Alt-Az mount whenever I got my very first Celestron Newtonian scope. And it's very similar to that, what we're about to do in the preview screen in terms of how it works. And luckily for us, though, we have plate solving built into the ASIAIR. And because we have plate solving, it is extremely easy for us to kind of do like a virtual 3-star alignment is kind of how you can think of it. All right. So let's say that you've got this situation where you finished polar aligning and the go-to is just not working. So the first thing that I would do in that scenario is I would tap on the telescope button at the top of the ASIAIR software, and then I would scroll down to the bottom and tap the go to home position button. There is a start button beside it. Tap that, press OK, and it should go back to the home position, which is wherever you started, essentially, pointing towards Polaris. If it does not, what you can do very easily is tap go to home position and let it slew to wherever it's going to slew. And then if it's in the completely, ass backwards place, then what a very simple way to fix this is to literally unlock the clutches, put the scope where it is pointing at the North Celestial Pole, and then relock them. And then the ASIAIR is going to think that, it's at home and it's pointing toward Polaris. But that's not what I'm telling you this for. What I'm really telling you this for is what you can do from the preview screen. So let's say you finish your polar alignment, okay, and you've done a good job. What you can do is actually slew more than 5 degrees away from Polaris. So you need to get a little bit further away. So like right now, this time of year, maybe you manually slew over to like Dubai and Ursa Major. And once you're over there, what you want to do on the preview screen is go ahead and take a picture. So press the shutter button, and it doesn't matter really how long it is, but, do 3 seconds. So that way you get enough stars where it does an easy plate solve. So do a 3-second exposure, let it take it, let it load the photo up. And then on the left-hand side, you've got another bunch of buttons, and they start with a histogram at the top, then guiding, then solve, then detect, then annotate. And what you want to do after you've taken that photo and it's loaded up is go over there and press the solve button and just give it a sec, and it'll do a plate solve. And then it should say solve success and give you the option to sync to mount. And what you want to do is hit sync to mount. And now it actually knows where it is. So from there, you can essentially just repeat the process. So slew to another area that's not too far away, maybe, 5-10 degrees further from where you currently are, take a photo, press solve, and then sync to mount. Now, I will tell you this trick doesn't work if you're right on Polaris, because it won't do a sync to if you're less than 5 degrees away from Polaris. But this is a really cool thing that I figured out early on with the ASIAIR that I wanted to share with you guys, because honestly, I can't tell you the number of times I've seen people on like Facebook groups or Reddit complaining about the ASIAIR not slewing where they think it's going to, and then getting, frustrated or confused and just kind of quitting at that point, which is understandable if you don't know how to kind of manually correct for those kind of errors. So hopefully that will help. If it does help, or any of these things help you, please let me know about them. I'd be really curious to hear. All right, so let's talk about live stacking for a little bit here, because this is one of my favorite things to do with the ASIAIR, and it's fun for star parties. It's fun for, anytime you're hanging out, looking at the stars actively, maybe hanging out with friends, showing them, how M33 starts off as just a fuzzy blur and eventually becomes a beautiful spiral galaxy. And it's super easy to do with the live stacking mode. And the beauty of it is that there's an option within to save each frame individually while stacking. So while you are getting the benefits of live stacking, electronically assisted astronomy, more and more detail comes out as time passes, you're also getting those individual raw frames. So if you want to take them back afterwards and process them like any other normal astrophotography photo that you wanted to, you absolutely can. And they've actually updated this particular area to include some cool new features for when you are adding in flats, darks, and bias files to make these images look a little bit better. So like, let's say, for example, that you're at a star party for, I don't know, let's say Boy Scouts. Let's say there's a big group of, 30 kids, and they have a projector set up in the warm room, and you decide that your telescope is going to project an image of Andromeda on there. Well, what would make Andromeda look better during live stacking? I would think calibration frames certainly would. And during the live stacking mode, you actually have the ability to load up calibration frames. So if you have like a dark library that you have previously built and you want to save that onto the ASIAIR, you can absolutely do that. Or if you're just setting up and you don't have any of those things ready to go, they actually have a built-in calibration frame menu now within the live stacking screen. So at the top, you'll see light, flat, dark, and bias. And if you click on flat or dark or bias, it will actually show you, you can set it to take 5, 10, or 15 or 20 flats, and same with darks and bias files. And it gives you an estimated time for how long it'll take to take those calibration frames. Like under flats, for example, it says point the telescope at a uniform light source, use the same camera gain and temperature that you will use while taking your frames, etc. So it literally walks you through how to take the flats, and then will automatically apply those flats to your live stack. So in other words, that picture that you're throwing up on the projector is going to include calibration frames, which is going to make it look just 100 times better when you're doing electronically assisted astronomy. So that's a really cool feature. I don't think a whole lot of people know about, but it's definitely there and should definitely be used. Now, that being said, I will say I was shocked to learn how many people do not use the plan mode at all on their ASIAIR. And I don't know why they don't use it, but you definitely should. So let's go ahead and hop over to that menu. If you tap where preview and polar alignment are and tap on plan, you can actually go ahead and bring that up. So plan is a little bit finicky in some ways, particularly when you have to like reset the plan before you can make any changes to a plan. I find that kind of annoying, but once you get used to it with, when you can and can't put the little check mark beside the boxes, and when you can and can't press the reset button, when you kind of figure that out, you can get through it pretty quickly as a workflow. But anyway, if we go into the plan screen and then click on those 3 little lines, you should get a big plus button on your phone or tablet that will allow you to go ahead and add a target to your plan. And the first thing that'll come up will be a list that says tonight's best, and it will basically give you a list of different objects that are available in the night sky. If you look to the right-hand side, you can actually see where they will peak in terms of their height in the night sky. So like, for example, I'm looking at the Christmas tree cluster, and it's telling me that at, let's see, 1956 local time, it will get to the meridian, and then right after that, it will start dropping down. And the highest that it's going to be is around, well, what is that? Between 45, maybe 70 degrees looking at it. And it gives you a visual representation, a line on a curve, basically. And I personally love that because that's a quick and easy way to say, okay, it's in the south part of the sky, and it's up high enough right now that I can take some images of it for, at least an hour or so. And it'll tell you what time they'll drop off below the horizon and those sorts of things. So it can be a really handy tool for when you're like not really sure what you want to shoot tonight, but you want to see, kind of what's in the area, what's up high enough and worth shooting for at least a few hours. Tonight's best is a great way to find out. But if you don't want to use, one of their tonight's best items, you can always click on the little search magnifying glass and enter in an object number. I will say a lot of like the colloquial names, I guess you could say, like if you type in Horsehead Nebula, it might not come up, and you'll have to type in like the National Catalog of Galaxies numbers for specific galaxies and what have you, NCG, or you can put in the Messier catalog number, etc. But sometimes just like the regular names will not come through for whatever reason. And they should probably update their library, but to my knowledge, they have not yet. So anyway, for this, let's say we're going to do Orion. So we press the plus button. We go to tonight's best screen. We press the little search magnifying glass and just type in M42, and then M42 obviously comes right up. We can tap on the photo that shows the Orion Nebula and press the confirm button, and then we'll be back at the main planning screen where it shows you the target name, the delay, the right ascension and declination of the object, and then you will see another plus button to the right of the target. And we want to click on that plus button, and that will give us the sequence generator. And the sequence generator is a tool that's in pretty much every astronomy tool, whether it's, ASIAIR or Nina or K-Stars or whatever it is that you're using, there's generally going to be a sequence generator. And that's basically where you set up exactly what you want to happen for how long, what gain, how many times, and what have you. So in this case, when you press the plus button, you will get presented with create new sequence, and you'll get a few different options. You get lights, bias, flats, and darks. And you might say to yourself, like, if I'm out taking images of stars, why would I care about the darks? Well, think about it for a minute. If you wanted to come in here and build a new darks library, you could select M42, but then put your lens cap on your telescope and turn the lights off. And then you could select darks. You could select the exposure length of 300 seconds, and then you could hit repeat 30 times and press OK. Then you could press the plus button again and choose darks, and then do 240 seconds, 30 times, OK. Rinse and repeat until you get down to, 5 seconds or 1 second, whatever your shortest exposure will be for any given session. And then, you can literally just walk away after you press start, and it will build that entire dark library. And the reason it's doing that is because you created a sequence. So the first one was 300 seconds. The second one is 240 seconds. The third one can be 180 seconds. And you get the point. But I tell you this because I know a lot of people who would go into like the sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the particular area, the auto run area, and build their dark library that way. And there's no need to do that because you can schedule them and have them all run, back to back, and, not have to worry about all that kind of stuff. And another great thing is if you're doing your flats, you can do them within here as well. So, I tell you all that just to let you know that the planner has the ability to literally plan out everything for an astrophotography session, from lights, darks, flats, and bias. You can control everything and kind of automate everything from within there. But I will tell you, like, for example, when we were talking about doing the Orion Nebula in HDR a few weeks ago, what I would do is I would do a search under the planner. I would search for M42 and then click that plus button. And then under lights, I would set the exposure to 180 second and then repeat it, as many times as I wanted to. Let's just say 30 for our example here. And then after that, you can press the plus button again and then change the exposure down to 5 seconds and do, say, 60 of those, and then press OK. And that way, when that first set of 30 3-minute exposures is up, it automatically starts taking the 5-second exposures. And you can pretty quickly, realize in your head how helpful this can be whenever you are, maybe sitting on a pier all night long, and Orion's going to set within a couple hours because it's galaxy season. And maybe after that, you want to slew to Leo. Well, you can time everything and set it up with the planning menu in such a way that it is no problem at all to do that. And you can't do that in the preview mode. I suppose you can do some of it in the auto run mode, but you wouldn't be able to, like, for example, build a dark library using the auto run mode, because it's not going to let you change the length of the exposure and then automatically start a new group of images from there. Now, another benefit of using the planner is that you can leave things in the planner. So even when you click that reset button to reset the plan, the actual object and where it is in the night sky with your telescope's rotation is still there. So if you think about that, that means if you want to do the same target night after night and you want to make sure that your telescope is lining up in the exact same way every night, then that is one of the easiest ways to do it. You can even do it over multiple nights if your telescope's rotated in different ways, because if you use the plan mode, it will let you actually rotate your telescope rotator to get it back in line with where that original image was taken. So it's a very, very useful tool. Don't be afraid to go in there and mess around with it, because the plan tool is it's great. So highly recommend giving that a try if you've been living in the the live mode or the auto run mode so far. Definitely start getting accustomed with plan. Now, another really fun thing that you can do with the ASIAIR that a lot of people don't ever do for whatever reason is go into video mode. And I love doing this whenever I'm looking at the moon in particular, because it's so fun to get in close on those craters and have a look. And depending on what type of camera you have, obviously will kind of determine the resolution and frames per second and all that kind of good stuff. But what really surprised me about the live mode on my 80 millimeter doublet telescope, which has a focal length of only 446 millimeters with the reducer on it, with the ASI 294 MC Pro camera, I was kind of blown away by how close I could get to the moon with that scope in video mode, because it'll let you lower down the resolution. And I understand that this is a digital crop. Like, I get it. If you're going from 1080p down to 360p, it's essentially just blowing that image up to fill your screen. But nonetheless, even at 240p, looking at the moon, it kind of blows me away, because it fills the entire screen of the scope up, and you have to slew around to different areas of the moon to check it out. And you can record all that while you're doing it. So, like, for example, if you had a situation where you knew the ISS was going to be passing over the moon, and you could line your 80 millimeter telescope, which is by no means, a planetary size telescope. But, if you line it up and set that resolution to, let's say, 720p, you will get a very large, image of the moon that's relatively good quality. I mean, don't get me wrong, 720p is not phenomenal, but it's not terrible by any means. And then if you record that ISS going over, chances are you can extract one of those frames out of the video and have a really cool image of the ISS. And it gives you some really cool features that you can tap to whenever you click on the little 3 lines after you're recording. You can make adjustments to like how many milliseconds the exposure is. A lot of different exposure settings that you can do from within the video mode. So that's another one that a lot of people don't ever check out. And I don't know why, because it's got some really, really awesome features within it. So highly recommend that you check out video mode if you haven't already. Even looking at planets, like looking at Saturn through my 80 millimeter doublet with the 294, if you get it in, 240p, it zooms in close enough, you can easily see the rings on an 80 millimeter telescope with no Barlow. So it's pretty cool. It's a fun thing to do. I'm realizing that this is a longer conversation than an hour. And I think this might be a good one to pick back up next week. So I think this is going to be a two-parter, just a deep dive into the ASIAIR and everything that it can do, and all the little neat features. I think I will tell you about one other cool thing that you can do on here before we start wrapping that up for the day, and that is the live stacking feature that is built into the ASIAIR. I don't think a lot of people realize that you can actually do a live stack directly on the ASIAIR. So, for example, if you've been in plan mode for the last 3 hours and you're at a star party and you kind of want to show people what you've got so far, but obviously you don't want to, pull all the images off your ASIAIR, load them into PixInsight on your laptop and do a stack and stretch and all that. Just for in a pinch, stack and stretch, if you click on at the top where our top buttons are, if you click on the one that says eMMC, which is the storage one, and then scroll down to the bottom, you'll see an area that says post stacking. And not only, can it stack right within the ASIAIR, but it can do planetary, it can do deep space, it can do specific lunar surface stacking, whatever that is. I suppose that's planetary, but slightly more refined. And it can do solar as well. Obviously, do not point your telescope at the sun without the proper filters. But the deep sky object stacking in particular is what we would want to be looking at. And it even gives you the option to load in your darks, flats, and bias. So you can get a pretty darn good looking image off of the live stack and auto stretch feature in the ASIAIR. Believe it or not, it does work pretty well. I've done it myself with Nebula. I've done it with the Heart Nebula, and I was honestly pretty impressed with how good of a job that it did. So definitely make sure that you check that out if you haven't before. And a lot of these tips will come in handy this summer when we're at star parties, and I'm hoping a lot of you guys will attend some. I am still working on planning for the first Astrocast star party. So news to follow on that, but we are working on it. So that's in the works. And I want to give a quick shout out to some friends over on our private Discord chat for the Patreon. They have been working on a project to combine data. So this is something that I can't even remember if it was me or one of the members. One of us suggested all getting together on a group project and combining data, just like any of the other amateur groups do in the world. And if you don't know, let me explain real quick. As astronomers, we can take, 6 to 8 hours, I guess, depending on where you are in the world, of images per night. But if there's 2 of us, we can take 16 hours of images per night. And if there's 3, we can do 24, and you get the point. So more astronomers working together equals more data. And even if you're in a completely different part of the country, if you're pointing your telescope at the same target and you are both using the, same settings and similar focal length, etc., you can combine those datas into one image. And the reason I'm telling you this is because we're starting to do that in the chat, and 2 of the guys got together and are working on just that. So the goal being, hopefully, we'll be able to pick a target where we can all get involved. And, I'm thinking maybe even regardless of focal length, it might be really cool to have like one person do a really wide shot, and then a bunch of us do, deep sky shots of nebula, and then maybe combine them together so you can zoom in and out and see all the detail. I could see that being really cool, though processing it would probably be pretty difficult. But anyway, just wanted to shout out to those guys. Super cool project that we're working on. It's a very popular way to do astrophotography these days. The very famous photo of Andromeda, specifically the O2 emission nebula, O3, oxygen 3 emission nebula, was found by a group of amateur astronomers, and they got to name the object and everything. And it's a huge nebula that's right near Andromeda, and they discovered it. So maybe we'll be able to do something similar, maybe not, who knows. But either way, it'll be super duper fun, and I'm really looking forward to that. And if you'd like to join us on any of those journeys, feel free to donate to the show at patreon.com/the Astrocast. And we would very much like to have you join us on the Discord for a chat about all things astronomy. Well, guys, I think that is going to do it for this week. I can't say that I'm not a little bit disappointed that we're doing the 50th episode and I didn't get to do all the cool new stuff that I'm planning on doing. But stay tuned, because that is definitely going to be coming. So don't you worry about that. We are going to get the call-in line working. I will finish the song. It's just a matter of time. Turns out you can't learn a new digital audio workstation in, a few minutes. It takes a little bit longer than that, but I did bang out a few tunes, got some drums laid down and whatnot. So it's definitely coming along, but very, very much appreciate you guys tuning into the show this week. And I suppose that it would be crazy of me not to give a recommendation this week. You know what I'm going to recommend this week? I'm going to recommend a game that I have put over 100 hours into, which is incredibly rare for me, but it's just my absolute favorite game to sit back and relax with. It's extremely low effort, but also very rewarding in that there is a ton of different stuff to unlock and endless replayability. It's a PC game, but I believe it's on all the other platforms nowadays, like Xbox and PlayStation and what have you. And there's lots of DLC for it too, but the DLC is very affordable, just $2, $3, $4 for the DLC, and it gives you a ton of new features. And I guess all there's left to say is it's Vampire Survivors. So it's a roguelite for PC. I played on Steam personally, but like I say, it's available on other consoles as well. It's incredibly simple and yet somehow very complex, and that it'll take you a long, long time to unlock everything. And it's very much one of those games that makes you want to unlock everything, because there's new weapons and characters to find and tons of secrets crammed into the game that are everywhere. Anyway, for me to put over 100 hours into a game, it's got to be really, really special. And Vampire Survivors is just that. So also bought a copy of it for a good friend of mine this week, my oldest friend in the world, in fact. And me and him played it last weekend together for hours. It's got really good couch co-op, up to 4 players at the same time. So just highly, highly recommend it. If you haven't yet, definitely check out Vampire Survivors. You will enjoy it. So guys, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Astrocast. Thanks so much for coming along on this journey with me. If you've listened to all 50 episodes, special shout out to you. I can't thank you enough for being a longtime listener of the show. It means so much to me. And let's just get back to it and do another 50 episodes. And we will maybe do an actual celebration when we get to 100 episodes. I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. But until then, enjoy it. I hope that you have great weather over the next several days. I don't know. We're getting nearer and nearer to full moon. That moon's getting bright. It's halfway up there. Don't forget about the lunar blood moon eclipse. That is Thursday night. So don't forget to check that out. It's definitely worth doing. Play around with your camera beforehand. Maybe go out Wednesday night and take a bunch of photos of the moon just to practice. Make sure that you can focus. Remember, you want a faster shutter for the moon. The moon moves very quick, especially at long focal lengths. So speed up that shutter. Don't get blurry photos of the moon. Don't send me no blurry photos of the moon. I don't want to see them bloody photos. So blurry photos, that is. Anyway, I'm getting delusional. I'm tired. It's late. Thanks so much for tuning into the Astrocast. I'm your host, Rue, and as always, clear skies.